Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Pony Talk Podcast. We are keeping it real as we return once again, guys. As you know, we are a little bit behind schedule with the podcast, but if you want any more information about that, please watch my recent video that I made for the entire channel, talking about what has been happening, what has been going on, and yeah, everything will be on that video. But we are back, we return, and we should be here for quite a while now. Don't have any crazy things going on at the time being, but we will soon, like later on. But anyways, welcome guys, as always. I am your lovely host, Dashi101, and I am glad to be here today. Because we got some interesting episodes to cover. That's why we are here. So, this is episode 10 we are going to be discussing. Because this is the last episode we left off. We left off with episode 9. So, yeah, we're kicking it off with 10. And then we'll move on to the next one. And then I think the next one. And, yeah. So, we're going to get back up there, guys. And the overall episode is episode 206. And this week's episode title, or I should say a few-week episode title, was called Going to Seed. Going to Seed is what we're going to be discussing on this podcast. Yeah, I was actually supposed to make this last night. But when you're super tired and, things happen, I had a very eventful, night, I guess you could say, to where I was just, cutting the grass. It's a nice day, and, had a little accident with the lawnmower, because things like that happen. Stupid little things happen that way. So that's just a little detail of why this wasn't out earlier. So yes, but anyway, let's get on with the podcast, guys. So, Going to Seed starts off where Sweet Apple Acres is. Sweet Apple Acres. It's great to be back. And this is where we have the Apple family were introduced at the dining room. Where they're getting ready for something called the Confluence. The Confluence is a rare apple harvest where the apples turn, I guess, I'm trying to get it out of what I'm going to say. They all turn ripe at the same time. It's very rare. It only happens certain parts of the years and all that. And the Apple family is getting ready to harvest these apples throughout the acres. And Big Mac, poor Big Mac in this episode, he is so exhausted and so tired. And the reason why, what we find out in the beginning of the episode, is he's really tired because he's been putting together this huge entire map of the Confluence, showing each individual section that each character, sorry about that, I don't know why these pop-ups love to come up, but gotta love them. Anyway, the Confluence. So the Confluence map is showing each different character in different colors. We have orange for Applejack, yellow for Apple Bloom, green for Granny, and then we have red for Big Mac. So they're split up in these each individual parts, and we are also joined by another very interesting pony. Goes by the name of Goldie Delicious. Now, Goldie Delicious is related to the Apple family. She mostly with Granny Smith, and she's also excited to do this apple harvesting. But Applejack doesn't know how much she's going to do. But if Granny can do it, she definitely can. So what the heck? More help, more time to get this apple harvesting on the roll. This is where Goldie goes into something a little interesting. And this is a tale that I guess goes throughout the episode that is kind of the main key. And I also found out, too, that the episode name actually was changed. For some reason, they didn't like it. I feel like it was a better title than what they gave us here, Going to Seed. But the episode bases around something called the Great Seedling. And the Great Seedling is a supposable myth that makes these beautiful harvests and makes these amazing trees grow crazily with apples and different other stuff. So you literally have the grand patch of apples, carrots, anything you're growing if you are out in the farm. And it only happens with certain places like that. Only if you can catch the Great Seedling, which is pretty big throughout this episode. Which brings me back to what the episode title is called. The episode title at one point was titled "It's the Great Seedling," which then got changed to what is now called "Going to Seed." So yes, this Great Seedling story is so huge. Apple Bloom gets so entwined with it, and she loves it. She loves the idea. She wants to see if this, like, myth, as ponies are calling it, or old pony's tale, is true. Well, Applejack, I guess you could say, is the downer, the party pooper in this situation. And she tells Apple Bloom, hey, you know, we do have a harvest that we have to attend to. And we need as much help on the field as possible. So, you know, going looking for a creature that may or may not exist, just help us, because we need it more than catching a mythical creature called the Great Seedling. And Goldie then goes in, oh, it's real, Applejack. The Great Seedling is more than a myth. It is not a myth. It is 100% real. And this is where things get, like, kind of interesting, and Apple Bloom really wants to go do this. And Applejack then says, well, you know, if she looks for the Great Seedling today, and then we wake up the next day, and she doesn't catch it or anything, maybe she'll stop and she'll help us that day. So Applejack decides, you know what, Apple Bloom, go ahead. Go look for the Great Seedling, and make traps and stuff. And Apple Bloom's like, great, I'll see you guys in a bit. And she heads off with all her little contraptions, and she's putting them together all throughout Sweet Apple Acres. And then this is where we have all the other ponies helping with the harvest, which Apple Bloom is now eliminated from that. So now Big Mac has to make more modifications to his beloved map that he spent hours on, and has not really got any much sleep, as by what we're told. As Apple Bloom is doing her little search, and Applejack thinks this is a waste of time, a waste of precious time, that she could be helping the apples make this harvest come to life, and they can get out sooner and do all these other things. Applejack decides to get Big Mac to handle the harvest, and so now that Big Mac is more determined to work on this harvest, he's not too happy about that, but also a little too tired as well. He's very sleep deprived. So the next morning, we wake up, or the Apple family wakes up, and Apple Bloom rushes out the door to see if any of her traps and shenanigans actually worked. Which, in fact, they didn't work, but they were set off. And also something that the Apple family notices is a very interesting design made on one empty part of the field. It's this very, like, I guess you could... I'm looking at a picture right now. It looks like something you would draw if you wanted to make it look like wind or something like that. It's these big curls that are forming all over, and they're all made out of apples. And Applejack and the rest are kind of in shock. And this is where Goldie kind of goes up to Applejack saying, so, you know, that whole story about it being a myth, well, look for yourself. And Applejack's like, well, what? Huh? And she's very confused. She doesn't know quite what to say. So Apple Bloom is even more intrigued in setting more traps to see if she can catch the great seedling. This is now worrying Applejack, because Applejack, you know, she's already wasted a day in her eyes, and she doesn't want another day to pass. So she's like, Apple Bloom, come on now. Can you at least help with the harvest and stuff? Poor Big Mac, me, and the rest have been doing the apple harvest all by ourselves without you, while you were just setting up your traps and all that to catch the great seedling. And Apple Bloom's like, oh, come on, Applejack, just please. I want to do more of this. And Applejack then says, you know what? You can, but help us with the harvest, and then you can do whatever. And she's like, I don't like that idea. And then Applejack then decides, you know what? She's like, if you help us, and we get through quite a bit of it done today, maybe I'll help you set up the traps and all that, and we both could look for the great seedling ourselves. And so this is where both Applejack and Apple Bloom make a deal, and Apple Bloom is very excited, so now she even has a helper. So they go do what they just dealed on, and Applejack is doing her part in the harvest, Apple Bloom is doing her part in the harvest, and then we have the rest also, and Big Mac is still sleep deprived. So this is day number 2 for him. While everything is done and all that, Applejack's like, alright, Apple Bloom, I gave you a promise. I said that I would help you set up traps for the great seedling, and we've done our part for the day. So, yeah. So, Apple Bloom gets more materials, resets the traps that she previously set up, and they make new ones. And Applejack is kind of enjoying this little bond between Apple Bloom and, her sister, her big sister, that she looks up to. So, this is where they pretty much have a really good time. And it seems like everything's going good and all that. And this is where we start looking to another point of view of why Applejack's not so intrigued about this whole catching the great seedling and this whole ponytail that all ponies on farms tell their fillies and all that. Because Applejack was associated with that. She was also just like Apple Bloom. The reason why she stopped and kind of didn't look at it anymore was mainly because she also set up traps. This is when it was her mom, and her dad, which are her mom and dad was Bright Mac and Peer Butter, which we have more information about them in a long time previous episode, which that episode still to this day I think is one of the sweetest episodes out there, about Applejack's parents. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But anyway, Applejack explains her interest in catching and capturing the Great Seedling, and when she gets all these traps set up, she's so excited and all that, and she was going to also help out with the rare occasion of the harvest, but in that sense, she ends up forgetting where one of the traps were, and she gets caught into that. And one of these traps, what it is like there was a bunch of leaves like piled on these sticks, and when something would walk on it, they would fall right through into this giant hole. And Applejack did just that. So she unfortunately was stuck in that hole for a very long time, and she missed the harvest, which she was very disappointing. So from that day on, she promised herself that she would not do any more hunting for the Great Seedling, and just believed it was a old ponytail that, you know, they would tell their kids and all that. So with that being said, Apple Bloom kind of is like, wow. She's like, I'm so sorry about that, sis. And she's like, well, you know, that's behind us. That's a long time ago. You know, now is a new day, a new start. That happened a long time ago. Let's forget about the past and move on to where is the present. And I can't be more excited and happy to be doing it along with my little sister, which is a cute little bonding moment. So it's really nice, and I feel it's very appropriate. So the next day, this is day number 3 of the harvest. Applejack and Apple Bloom both run out the door to see if they caught the Great Seedling or if there's anything else, which now there's just more of these apples laid all out, and the traps are still empty and all that, but they're set off, they're empty, so they didn't catch anything. This is where Applejack really starts to believe that the Great Seedling is actually a thing. She's like, I don't know what to think of. What should we do here? And this is where we get into thinking about other things and other plans on what they can do to capture the Great Seedling, which they start talking about it, which would be them staying up all night during the harvest, even though, like, or what am I saying? I'm confusing myself. So the confluence, while it's going on, and, you know, as talking about that before, they decide, okay, you know what, we're gonna stay up tonight, all night, and we're going to look for this Great Seedling ourselves and see if we could see it with our eyes. And if we could see it with our eyes, we could probably lure it into a trap instead of, you know, going to bed, because we probably will have a better shot if we do that. But we also have to be very quiet. So yeah, they get really excited. And then we have Goldie, who kind of goes to Applejack, seeing like, so have you basically accepted the Great Seedling into your heart now? And Applejack's like, well, you know, I'm kind of doing it mostly for Apple Bloom. but at the same time, I mean, everything that's happened kind of makes me rethink everything. And so that's kind of, you know, Goldie giving Applejack a little bit of a push, saying, yes, the Great Seedling is a thing. And then she starts questioning, well, are you the one who did this? Because if you are, then yeah, this is going to be very disappointing. Or has it been any other part of the family who's done it? And all of them said no, they have nothing associated with the little apple tracks or anything like that. So Applejack's like, well, shoot, alright, well then I guess the Great Seedling does really exist. Let's do it. So they set up everything again, and this limits more ponies, because now I think Goldie leaves and Granny's tired, and then we have Applejack helping Apple Bloom set up for the Great Seedling. So this limits Big Mac's map even more. So now he's crossed out every single pony who was supposed to help with the Great Harvest. And so now he's the only one doing this whole entire thing, which I feel really, really bad for him, because that's not fun, especially how many acres they have of land. So yeah, that's a lot of apples to harvest. So yeah, and not even to mention, also, Big Mac is still sleep deprived. He still has not gotten enough sleep. This kind of puts in a wonder, like, I kind of think in this part of the episode, why has Big Mac not gotten enough sleep? What is going on? So, yeah, well, that's just my little, like, thing and stuff, because I was kind of wondering that. So, the night comes, and we have, Applejack and, Apple Bloom, who are now staking out, as what it's called. They got a little lookout tower thing that they're watching out. They got all the traps set, and they kind of talk about, ooh, you know, this is going to be really good if we end up actually catching the Great Seedling. And they're so excited, and then this is where we start seeing something. Something's moving in the distance, and we see something run past. The traps are going off and all that. And this is where Applejack and Apple Bloom look at each other and go, the Great Seedling! And they're like so excited. So they're like, okay, we're gonna go that way, see if we can scare it off into this trap, or figure out something. We'll figure out the rest while we're going running towards it. So they go look for the Great Seedling in the unfinished harvest. So while they're running off in the distance and all that, they later find out that the Great Seedling isn't in fact the Great Seedling, yet they just stumble across a wild Macintosh, if we should say. So Big Mac is the Great Seedling, which Apple Bloom and Applejack, I had to think about that, I had a brain fart, are kind of really confused about this. Why is Big Mac disguised as a Great Seedling? And then they find out that he's sleepwalking. So now this gives the general idea of why Big Mac is so sleep deprived. He's been sleepwalking and he doesn't even know it. So basically him being up all night, for 3 nights actually. So once they kind of surround Big Mac and all that, they realize, you know, so all of this has been Big Mac, and they're kind of really disappointed, and Applejack is also disappointed because this is once again his second time that the Great Seedling hunt time has failed for her. First she got caught in one of her traps, and now finding out that her brother is the Great Seedling. So yeah, sorry about that. There's cars outside just going by. Yeah. So, now that they discover all this, the next morning, the Apple family brings in a successful harvest. They collect all the apples left from the giant harvest that only happens so very rarely. And this is when they kind of start talking about it, and they're kind of disappointed that they didn't capture the Great Seedling. And they now are starting to accept that this is a myth, that this isn't real. The Great Seedling is just, yeah, it's an old fairy tale. Until they see more tracks and all that, and Big Mac was in the house the whole time this time. After they found out that he was the one running around acting like the Great Seedling and all that. And Big Mac is in better shape too. He's not sleep deprived anymore. But there's more tracks. But they're not made out of apples. No. They're made out of carrots this time. So now Applejack and Apple Bloom kind of look at each other and they're like, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" They're like, "Mm-hmm. Let's go." So they head off to look and see where the tracks lead them to. And that basically kind of wraps up the end of the episode, and we're left off to something called "You're Never Too Old to Be a Filly," and that's said by Applejack. So, and I was wrong about Goldie leaving. Goldie was also helping out with the harvest, but she was mostly helping with Granny Smith. But this is where she actually leaves to go home, and she's the one who notices the tracks of carrots for Applejack and Apple Bloom to go discover. So, yeah, that basically wraps up that episode. Whew. Alright. So that was a bit of a mouthful for me. So yeah, this episode I thought was very tasteful, very interesting as well. I kind of really did enjoy this one. I thought it was very appropriate. And I don't know, I just, for some reason, I really like these Apple Bloom and Applejack episodes. I think they're very sweet, sweet as an apple, and they just give an interesting story. I don't know why, but they do, and it's nice to see Goldie back, Golden Harvest, or not Golden Harvest, what the heck am I saying? Golden Delicious. It's nice to see her again. So, yeah, it's been a while since we've seen her as a character in an actual full-blown episode. So, yeah, I give this episode a thumbs up. Definitely a thumbs up. Not 2 thumbs up, because, I mean, like, it wasn't the best episode, but it definitely deserves a thumbs up, I gotta say. So, yeah, there were a lot of topics to discuss about this episode, and kind of some interesting ones. One definitely being the name change on the title from Going to Seed from It's the Great Seedling. So, yeah, I found that to be interesting and a little bit of a history with the episode. And then just, you know, kind of seeing where the episode kind of evolves around. Is the Great Seedling real, or is it not? And then we find out it's not, but it then leaves us off with thinking, yes, the Great Seedling is real. So I kind of like that. So yeah, it wasn't too plain or anything like that. It was about a medium. So yes, but I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about Going to Sea? Did you like it? Did you think it was an alright episode as well? Or did you think that it was just, it was garbage? But, you know, it's up for you and you guys to decide. leave your comments down below saying what you thought about that episode, and I'll be more than happy to see what you guys have to say, because this is why we do what we do here on the podcast. We want to hear from you guys, you the audience. It's what makes this podcast come to life. And also, speaking of the podcast, if you also want to join the Pony Talk podcast, please leave it down in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to let you on to the podcast. All you need to say is, hey, can I join? And I'll let you on for the rest and all that. So, yeah, this is a wrap with episode 10 going to seed. The next episode that we will be discussing, which will be very soon, maybe in a day or so, the next episode will be, the overall episode will be 207, and the episode title will be called Student Council. So, Student Council, we will be taking a look and diving into that episode as well. So, I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. Again, sorry for the little bit of delay. We got to get back on track, back on rolling. And, yes, so I'm very excited. So, thank you all so much for watching the Pony Talk Podcast. And we will see you in the next one, guys. Peace out. Bye, every pony!